We all know eye contact is important, right?
Yeah.
But how often do we actually, think about the why behind it?
It's such an instinctive thing.
It really is.
Yeah.
So in this deep dive, we're going to unlock some pretty surprising secrets of, well, something we all do every single day,
Mm.
eye contact. We're diving into Michael Ellsberg's The Power of Eye Contact. And this book, it's really fascinating.
Yeah, and you know what I love about his approach? It's that he really takes us back. He goes all the way back to the ancient roots of eye contact and then brings it to like our modern day understanding of its power.
Totally. He goes way back. So let's start at the beginning for our listeners. What's the deal with eye contact from an evolutionary standpoint?
Okay, so imagine our ancestors, right? They relied on eye contact for survival.
Makes sense.
And not just to like coordinate a hunt, but to sense danger. Like in a split second.
Oh, for sure.
Think about it. If your hunting partner suddenly looked fearful, you knew to be on high alert.
Yeah.
It was a matter of life or death.
Yeah, you don't want to be the last one to figure it out.
Exactly.
So are you saying that instinct is still with us, even when we're just at the grocery store or something?
Absolutely. And that actually brings us to something pretty cool. Mirror neurons.
Okay, tell me more.
So these little brain cells, they're essentially hardwired for empathy.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're the reason we tear up during those really sad movies
Mm.
or like feel a jolt of excitement when you're at a concert and everyone's feeling the music.
So it's not just seeing, it's like feeling what other people feel through eye contact.
Precisely. Ellsberg really emphasizes that mastering eye contact is like unlocking this superpower because it taps into this primal human need for connection and understanding.
I love that. But okay, how do we actually become eye contact masters? Because I've got to be honest, some of those eye contact exercises I've tried, they were more awkward than anything else.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But that's where Ellsberg really shines. He gives us a really practical five-step process. And he emphasizes that it's not about like this intense stare down with someone.
Oh, thank goodness. Because that can be a bit much.
Exactly. It can be really off-putting. Instead, he says it's about finding what he calls the embracing gaze.
I like that, the embracing gaze. Okay, so how do we do that? What's the secret?
So it might sound a little weird at first, but he says to focus on one eye at a time.
Really? One eye at a time?
It sounds counterintuitive, but it helps maintain this softer, more natural connection.
Oh, okay. Anything else?
And also relax your jaw because, if you're tense, that often translates into this harsh or overly intense gaze.
It's crazy how much these little, physical cues can impact how we come across to others.
Absolutely.
I mean, even thinking about, someone like Bill Clinton.
Oh, interesting example. What about him?
Well, Ellsberg actually talks about how Clinton, despite people's political views, he had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room.
Yeah, he was known for that.
And Ellsberg suggests it's all in the eye contact, right? Like, Clinton was somehow able to convey genuine interest and presence just through his eyes.
Exactly. It's not some
Right.
sort of trick or technique. It's
Yeah.
that authenticity shining through.
Totally. So how does all of this apply to, say, the dating world? Because it feels like there are a lot of mixed messages out there about eye contact and flirting.
You're so right. It can be a minefield out there. Ellsberg spoke with a dating coach, Jess McCann, and she actually argues that women especially can feel pressured to be more passive. But she believes that eye contact can be incredibly empowering for women.
Okay, so it's about, taking control of the situation,
Mhm.
showing interest on your own terms.
Exactly.
But does it actually work? Have you heard any stories of this actually working in real life?
Ellsberg tells this great story about a woman named Annie. She consistently attracts these high-status men just by being open and engaged in conversation.
What's her secret?
Well, according to Ellsberg, it all starts with her eyes. She's not playing games or anything. She's just confidently signaling her interest.
It's like they say, confidence can be really attractive, but of course, with anything, and especially in dating, you have to be mindful of boundaries
Right.
because there's a fine line between confident eye contact and making someone uncomfortable.
Right, absolutely. And Ellsberg actually addresses that as well. He interviewed a woman named Lala who shared some techniques for gracefully ending unwanted attention.
Okay, so it's about recognizing that eye contact is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used in different ways.
Exactly.
So we've talked about, the dating world, but what about when it comes to business? I feel like there's this fine line between confident eye contact and maybe coming across as a little too intense?
Yeah, for sure. That's a common concern. And actually, Ellsberg talks about this with Victor Cheng.
Okay.
He's this really successful business coach.
Yeah.
And Cheng really emphasizes that authenticity is key. Like, it's not about using eye contact as this manipulative tactic, especially in sales.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that because no one wants to feel like they're being like stared down by a used car salesman.
Exactly. No cheesy vibes allowed. If you really want to build trust,
Right.
Chang says you have to actually believe in what you're selling.
Right.
Like that passion will naturally come through in your body language, especially your eyes. People can totally sense when you're being genuine, and that's huge.
Totally. Like, imagine a scientist who thinks they found the cure for cancer.
Okay, yeah.
You just know their conviction would be there in every interaction, every glance. It wouldn't even be something they'd have to think about.
Exactly. And speaking of genuine connection, let's talk about networking.
Ooh, yes. Networking.
Mhm.
Because that can be a whole other beast.
It really can be. And Ellsberg actually tells this hilarious story about going to a networking event, and he was like totally focused on what he could get out of it.
Well, we've all been there.
Right. And he admitted that he was probably giving off some pretty desperate vibes, like scanning the room, trying to make eye contact with whoever seemed the most important.
Oh, been there. So
Right.
what did he do? How did he turn it around?
So he decided to shift his focus to what he could give to the people he met. He decided to go in with this attitude of genuine curiosity and warmth and really make eye contact and listen to people.
I like that.
Yeah, he called it his Love Fest experiment.
Love Fest experiment, amazing. And did it work?
It totally did.
Yeah.
He ended up making some really valuable connections that he probably wouldn't have otherwise.
I love
It just goes to show that networking shouldn't be about, like, collecting business cards. It's
Right.
about making these authentic connections.
It's about building actual relationships. I love that.
Yeah, and this all ties back to the whole giver's gain philosophy that Ellsberg talks about. Like, that generosity, whether it's your time or your attention or your actual expertise, it comes back around.
It creates a sense of abundance instead of like scarcity and competition.
Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, I am so ready to ditch the awkward small talk and embrace the Love Fest approach.
I'm with you.
But before we move on to our next topic, which is self-defense, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
So before the break, we were talking about generosity and like really connecting with people authentically. And that actually leads us to, well, kind of a surprising topic in the book, self-defense. Yeah, it's not something you'd necessarily associate with eye contact, right?
Right. At first, I was like, okay, how does this fit in?
I had the same thought, honestly. But then Ellsberg interviews this MMA fighter, Eurasia Faber, and it totally shifted my perspective.
Okay, what do you have to say?
So Faber really believes that in the ring, eye contact is about projecting this, like, aura of calm confidence, which can actually throw your opponent off guard.
Interesting. So it's not about like an aggressive scare down or anything.
No, not at all. It's more about owning your space, communicating that you're not intimidated. And it's funny, Ellsberg actually compares it to this story about a gamekeeper in Botswana
Okay.
who used confident eye contact and body language to, get this, back down a charging lion.
Wait, seriously, a lion?
Yeah, it sounds crazy.
It does sound a little crazy.
But it just shows you how powerful these nonverbal signals can be. It's like this primal understanding that goes beyond species. The gamekeeper wasn't trying to be aggressive. He was just standing his ground, and the lion totally picked up on that.
Wow. That is wild. So it's like eye contact can be just as much about de-escalating a situation as it is about like confronting someone?
Exactly. It's this really nuanced form of communication.
So fascinating. It makes you think about all the different ways we use eye contact without even realizing it.
Totally.
Which actually brings up another question that I've always wondered about.
Hmm.
Can you tell if someone's lying just by looking at their eyes?
It's a popular idea.
It is.
But Ellsberg says it's actually way more complicated than that. He says that, yeah, our emotions often come out in our body language,
Right.
but our thoughts are much harder to read.
That's true.
Someone might avoid eye contact because they're nervous, not necessarily because they're lying.
That's a good point. Don't want to jump to conclusions just based on someone's eyes.
Right, exactly. And to really drive that point home, Ellsberg actually tells this kind of disturbing story about a bigamist who was able to deceive tons of women into marriage.
Oh, no.
And he used his charm and, you guessed it, confident eye contact to do it.
Wow. Okay, so maybe eye contact isn't a foolproof lie detector after all.
Definitely not. I think trusting your gut is still important.
For sure. Your intuition can pick up on things that maybe you don't even consciously register. Okay, so we've covered a lot. We've talked about like the science behind attraction, self-defense, even how to spot a liar, or at least how not to spot one. But Ellsberg doesn't stop there. He also goes into how eye contact plays a huge role in our closest relationships.
Yes. And he actually talked to some relationship experts, Gay and Kathleen Hendricks, and they found that, interestingly, men often have a harder time with eye contact during, like, difficult
Oh,
conversations.
really? Why do you think that is?
They think it's a way for some men to, like, avoid getting overwhelmed by their emotions.
That's really interesting. So then how can couples use eye contact then to strengthen their bond?
Well, the Hendricks talk about how important it is to really see your partner, accepting them for who they are, not trying to change them or, like, fix them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they suggest trying this thing called mindful gazing.
Okay, I like it already. Tell me more.
So you just look into each other's eyes with love and appreciation, and it can be really powerful.
It sounds really powerful, but
Right.
honestly, I think in our busy lives, it's so easy to like take the people closest to us for granted. Do you think we actually see our loved ones, really see them as much as we should?
That's such a good question. And it actually reminded me of this incredible story Ellsberg shares about a guy named Mike May who was blind for 43 years.
Wow, 43 years.
Yeah. And then he regained his sight. And one of the things that struck him the most was how beautiful he found people's eyes. It's like he was seeing the world with the sense of wonder that those of us who can see sometimes, like, lose sight of.
Totally. Like we forget to see the beauty in the everyday stuff.
Yeah.
It's amazing that he was able to see things with such fresh eyes.
Right. And that actually leads to the final piece of Ellsberg's exploration, the spiritual side of eye contact.
Oh, interesting. Tell me about that.
He dives into all these different mystical traditions, and he actually shares some poetry from Rumi, the Sufi mystic. And Rumi talks about how he experienced this deep, like, soul connection just by gazing into his companion's eyes.
Wow. So eye contact is this pathway to like a spiritual experience.
Exactly. It's about transcending the ego, connecting
Uh,
to that, like, divine spark that's within all of us.
so powerful. Honestly, Ellsberg's book has really made me think about eye contact in a whole new light. It's so
Mhm.
much more than just like a social skill.
I know, right? It's really about, like you were saying, inner work. It's about presence, authenticity, all of those things.
This deep dive has been amazing. We've gone from the science of mirror neurons to the spiritual teachings of Rumi, all through the lens of eye contact.
Such a fascinating journey.
It really has. And I think it really highlights just how powerful this one little thing we do every day can be.
Absolutely.
And on that note, we wanted to leave you with something to reflect on, something inspired by Ellsberg's final story. He talks about meeting this woman at a party, and she had this incredible warmth about her. And he felt truly seen just from the way she looked at him.
I love that story.
So here's our challenge for you.
Mm.
Next time you lock eyes with someone, try to really see them. Look for that spark of like shared humanity, that connection that goes beyond words.
It's a beautiful reminder that we all have the power to make others feel seen and valued.
Exactly. And who knows, you might even discover a whole new depth to your own relationships and interactions. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the power of eye contact.